It's Black Monday across the NFL. Several teams have made changes at coach. Several teams are sticking with their coach and GM. I'll give you my thoughts on all of it. It's the Jake Asman Football Show, and it starts right now.
Oh, yeah. It's time for the Jake Asman Football Show. Brought to you by BetUS. Expert betting odds and fantasy stats. So let's get into some NFL football. Brought to you by our friends at BetUS. So get your questions ready. Here's your host, Jake Asman.
Yes, indeed. Happy Monday. It is Black Friday, which is a day synonymous with coaches and GMs across the NFL being fired. And, of course, we have a lot to talk about in regards to Black Monday. But first, I want to say that the Jake Asman Football Show is presented by BetUS. Folks, sign up using BetUS as your go-to sports book. We'll talk about the playoff games that are now set for Wild Card Weekend later in the week. But if you want to bet on any sport, including Wild Card Weekend in the NFL, do it with BetUS. They're offering a 150% sign-up bonus with your first deposit and then a 125% bonus with your second and third deposits. Shout out to BetUS for being our presenting sponsor. So it is, of course, Black Monday in the NFL. And honestly, I think the bigger story are the teams that didn't make changes thus far versus the teams that have made changes to this point. Let's start with the teams that have made changes. Right now, we know this. The Jaguars fired Doug Peterson. The Patriots fired Gerard Mayo. That happened not even on Black Monday. That happened, an hour and a half after they won a game and cost themselves the number one pick yesterday? So the Jaguars and the Patriots joined the Jets, the Bears, and the Saints with teams that have open head coach positions. Now, the Jets, Bears, and Saints already had open coach positions because they fired their respective coaches midseason. So Doug Peterson is out. Gerard Mayo is out. I want to start with Jacksonville. Why would you fire Doug Peterson, but then Trent Baalke would remain as the team's general manager? See, if you're Jacksonville, I think your job, you could sell it as an attractive one for the right coach. The division you're in is not great. It's a division that seemingly you see a winner come out of there every few years that's different. You have a franchise quarterback in Trevor Lawrence that, while he has been disappointing overall to what he's supposed to be, he does have talent, and he is someone that I believe, with the right coaching, you can win with. But who wants that job of the general manager there that's not very good? What has Trent Baalke done to earn the right to hire another coach? He's hired one good coach in his entire tenure. And that good coach is Jim Harbaugh. That's it. Go look at his other hires. They've been awful. So I don't understand the Jaguars not cleaning house completely. I think it does not make their job nearly as attractive. In fact, the only team right now that has both coach and GM opening available is the New York Jets, which should help them get some top candidates for the GM role because they're the only team that needs a general manager. That's going to help. As far as the Patriots doing what they do, look, Gerard Mayo was in over his head. Should he have gotten more than 1 year? Sure, but you can't tell me that if the Patriots go out there and end up hiring Mike Vrabel, who I believe is the best candidate out there, that they somehow made a mistake not giving Gerard Mayo more time. Now, if they don't land Mike Vrabel, I think we could question it. But it feels like, connect the dots, if Vrabel's going to take a job, he'd go to New England. Now, New England doesn't have an opening at GM as of now. We know Mike Vrabel wants to feel comfortable with the GM he works with. Does that mean that he likes Elliott Wolf, who's their current GM right now? I don't know. I do know this, though. I think the bigger story are the lack of changes with certain teams than the changes that have happened, right? Like right now, Antonio Pierce is still the Raider head coach. Maybe that changes later today, West Coast. So maybe they haven't woken up out in Vegas yet. But come on. Antonio Pierce is keeping his job? Right now, you only have 5 openings. Typically, you get like 6 or 7, sometimes even more. So we'll see if anything changes. Now, to me, a huge mistake happened this morning in New York where I live. The New York Giants are choosing to keep Brian Dable and Joe Shane. Now, I'll say this. I think this is the wrong move for the New York Giants. However, if you are going to keep Joe Shane, I never understood why they'd fire Brian Dable. How is Dable more responsible for this mess than Shane? So I'll say it. Keeping both head coach Brian Dable and Joe Shane, the general manager, I believe is a mistake. But the only thing worse would have been firing Dable while keeping Shane. If you're sticking with one, you might as well stick with both. It still doesn't make it the right call, but at least both guys are on the same timeline. How could the New York Giants justify keeping both GM and coach when they no longer are in control of picking any quarterback they want? If they had the number one pick, you could say, well, give them a chance to get their guy. I would disagree with it, but at least it would make more sense. Now at number 3, they're going to be desperate to maybe try and move up. You have no idea if Tennessee or Cleveland would even make a deal with you. It's a 2-quarterback draft, and you're at number 3. And the Giants, objectively speaking, got worse, not better this season. The owner said he expects improvement. They won 6 games a year ago. They won 3 this year. Their offense was 30th in yards, 31st in points per game. Their defense was 24th, 21st in points per game. Their special teams was 24th. The Giants offensively were 29th in yards and 30th in points per game last year. So Brian Dable takes over offensive play calling, and it didn't change anything. The drafts by Joe Shane, well, this year is a lot better. The first 2, awful. Letting Saquon Barkley go, how devastating that has been. Letting Xavier McKinney go, how devastating that has been. I, for the life of me, do not understand how the hell John Mara thinks it is acceptable to run back this regime. And after you saw the way the Giants handled yesterday's game against the Philadelphia Eagles, where they were clearly not trying to win. They were rotating players. They're going for it on 4th and 9 on their own side of the field. Clearly, they were not trying to win that game yesterday. How did you allow the Giants to win that game against the Colts 2 weeks ago? You'd have the number 1 pick right now. You would have your pick of any quarterback. So not only is it a mistake to not clean house, but given how the Giants handled that game yesterday, it felt like ownership already told Brian Dable that he was safe. Lose the game. So I can't believe the New York Giants are sticking with Brian Dable and Joe Shane. I believe it is a massive mistake their organization is making. Hit the like button if you're just tuning in. It's the Jake Asman Football Show presented by BetUS, talking about everything going down on Black Monday in the NFL. Right now, only 5 open coach positions. Feels like Mike McCarthy is safe. And you know what? He should be. Where are the Cowboys finding a better coach? Disappointing year to say the least, but once Dak Prescott went down and the fact that they remained competitive, you got to give McCarthy some credit for that. He did win 12 games in a row, 3 years straight before this season. He's not a bad coach. He's a bad big game coach, which is a problem because the Dallas Cowboys' expectations are you got to get to the Super Bowl or it's a failed year. They've been to the playoffs a bunch. They haven't been to an NFC title game since Troy Aikman was their quarterback. You got to go back to 1995. But I do think Mike McCarthy earned the opportunity to come back. So it doesn't feel like Dallas is going to open. And Jerry's the GM, so that job's not opening. To me, the biggest storyline on Black Monday is not the changes that have happened, it's the lack thereof to this point. Right now, only 1 GM opening is out there, the New York Jets. Only 5 total coaching openings are out there. We saw Brian Dable and Joe Shane keep their jobs. To this point, we've seen Antonio Pierce keep his job. We've seen Mike McDaniel and Chris Greer down in Miami keep their job. We've seen Kevin Stefanski with Cleveland keep his job. And while I don't know if a lot of people thought change would happen there, when you watch the Browns late in the year, look like they mailed it in, finished 3-14, there was some thought, would the Browns maybe make a change? If you're ranking the openings across the league, I don't know if there's one clear best opening that's out there. We could say New England, but that would be you have to really believe in Drake May, and that roster is awful. We could say Jacksonville because of Trevor Lawrence, but you're stuck with Trevor Lawrence. What if you don't love Trevor Lawrence? Plus, Trent Baalke still being the GM there does not make that job attractive. It makes it less attractive. We could say the Jets because of the talent they do have, but you have an owner who nobody likes. And you have a situation at quarterback where what do you do with Aaron Rodgers? What's his future? Saints, cap hell. Bears, you have Caleb Williams, but their GM, Ryan Poles, kept his job. That makes it less attractive. Also in a division where there's a team with 14 wins that's playing in the damn wild card round this weekend. Think about that. So that division is loaded. You got the Lions, you got the Vikings, you got the Packers, all in the playoffs, all with 11 wins or more. I don't think there is one great job that's out there right now. I think all these jobs have pros, and they certainly have cons. This is a messy hiring cycle. And the reality is this. It feels like there could be more changes, but we're not there just yet. Black Monday, to me, has been underwhelming. It's been more about the lack thereof than the firings we've seen to this point. Some Jet news this morning I want to hit on here to the national audience on the Jake Asman Football Show. Woody Johnson, the New York Jets owner, in an interview with the New York Post, said something that you as a Jet fan have to hope is actually the case. Woody Johnson said that the next general manager and head coach of the Jets will decide what to do with Aaron Rodgers. We could debate whether or not the Jets should keep Aaron Rodgers. We could debate whether or not the Jets should move on from Aaron Rodgers. But ultimately, the decision on Aaron Rodgers should be made by the next general manager and the next head coach. They are the ones that should be deciding on Aaron Rodgers. They are the ones that should have the ultimate say on what to do at the most important, the most important position in all sports. They are the ones that should decide on what to do with the quarterback. They are the ones that need to make that decision, not the owner. The owner might have his personal feelings on Aaron. We hear reports of their relationship not being great, but ultimately, the decision should be made by the powers that be that are coming in. You hire football people, and Woody needs to let them do their job. And look, at the end of the day, yes, the Jets only won 5 games, but Aaron Rodgers finished his Jet career yesterday potentially as one of the better quarterbacks in franchise history. He's third in yards in a single season, third in touchdowns in a single season. 3,897 yards, 28 touchdowns, only 11 interceptions. The only Jet with more touchdowns and less interceptions in a season is Vinny Testaverde in 98. So while Aaron Rodgers was not great this year, and there were certainly games where he didn't play well, he also was playing through significant lower body injuries. We can't sit here and act like he didn't more times than not play well enough for this team to win games if the defense didn't fall off a cliff, if the coaching wasn't an abomination, if they didn't lead the NFL in drops, if the kicker, Greg Zuerlein, didn't cost them anywhere from 2 to 3 games. So while Aaron Rodgers' future is murky because I believe he'd have to take a pay cut, he'd have to show a willingness to learn a new offensive scheme, and a GM and head coach would have to be aligned in wanting him, at least it's Woody saying publicly that they will decide his fate and not, well, the decision's already been made by Woody. That Aaron Rodgers is going to show up to the facility today and he's going to be released. It should be made by the next people that are coming in. That's the question. So we'll see how it plays out, but you want the owner to hire football people and let them do their job. And we'll see. Once again, the New York Jets are the only team that has a GM opening right now. And I just saw as I'm taping this live show, the Jets have put in an interview request with Mike Borgonzi, who is the Kansas City Chiefs assistant GM and thought to be one of the top candidates in the hiring cycle. We will see how it ultimately plays out, but I saw Aaron Rodgers prove in Week 18 that he could still play at a high level. Doesn't mean he'll be a Jet. He might retire. In fact, he sounded like a guy this past week that was strongly considering retirement. But ultimately, it is good to hear that the decision on Rodgers is ultimately going to be made by the next general manager and head coach. At least that's what Woody is saying publicly, and let's hope that's true. Super chat from here from the memes. Why are we interviewing head coaches without a GM again? Because until today, the Jets were not allowed to talk to any GM or coach that's with a team. That now changes this week. That's why the Jets have already requested to speak with Mike Borgonzi, for example, for their GM opening. I still believe the Jets are ultimately going to hire their general manager first and then a head coach. But you could start the process and then you go from there. Ladies and gentlemen, hit the like button and please subscribe to the Jake Asman Football Show if you haven't done so already. A reminder that we are presented by BetUS. They are my go-to sportsbook, and they should be yours as well. Thank you to BetUS for sponsoring today's Jake Asman Football Show. We'll be back later in the week to react and preview Wild Card Weekend in the NFL. I think we just scratched the surface with big things happening across the league with firings. But we do have a pretty good idea, at least initially, how it's looking. 5 coaching openings and 1 GM opening to this point here on Monday morning. Thank you to everyone who watched the Jake Asman Football Show. I'm about to go live on my Jet YouTube show with Joe Beningo, so tune in for that. Thank you to BetUS again for sponsoring. My name is Jake Asman. This has been the Jake Asman Football Show. We're back later in the week to preview Wild Card Weekend. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll talk to you next time.